welcome to Mission Unstoppable. We're not that late. You know me. That's how it always goes. Warning, if you don't want to be inspired, motivated to act, or do anything but sit on a couch, as my guest is doing, tune out now. My guest today will be plugging yourself into a nuclear power source. I promise you that. Corey Poirier is a multiple-time TEDx, Mo Mondays, and PMX speaker. He's also the host of the top-rated Let's Do Influencing radio show, founder of the speaking program, founder blutalks, and he's been featured in multiple television specials. A columnist with Entrepreneur and Forbes magazine, he's been featured in and on CBS, CTV, NBC, ABC. He's a Forbes Coaches Council member and one of the few leaders featured twice on the popular Entrepreneur on Fire show. Now, if you don't know who John Lee Dumas is, he is the host of EOF and kind of the who's who of podcasters. To date, he has interviewed, Corey has, over 6,000 of the world's top leaders. He's also a practicing yogi and Rock Recording of the Year nominee. Yep, that's right, we said that. He just launched his 12th book, The Book of Why and How. Discover the timeless secrets to meaning, success, and abundance, which we are going to talk about in depth in just a few minutes. Corey is the father to his young sons, Sebastian and newborn Elijah, and he's also the boyfriend to Shelly and the father to, I never know if it's 2 or 3 because sometimes I see both, fur babies. How many do you have?
We have 2.
2 now. Okay.
Yeah.
Corey, I am sure that you hear this all the time, but you are busier than what we say is a one-armed paper hanger. How did you learn to accelerate time or add more than 24 hours to your day?
Well, it's a great question, and I'm going to be on the move for 1 second, Frankie, and I'll answer the question while I'm on the move because you mentioned the newborn, and so that's the new challenge. And I hear him because I'm working from home today, which is why I was at the couch, and I hear him crying and stuff, and I think, you know what?
All right, we get a look. All right, I'm so excited.
Well, no, I meant the other way. His mother's watching him. I meant I want to get us away from there a little bit so that on the downside, we're not listening to a crying baby. So the question was, how do I manage so much in the run of a 24-hour day? Was that the question?
Yeah. I mean, you do so much. So, just absolutely so much. People would say, well, how do you do that? How do you fit all that in? 12 books, coaching, teaching, inspiring, talking, wow. I know that you're running multiple programs simultaneously. Really, how do you do it? And you have a newborn.
Yeah. And on top of all that too, what we're also in the process of doing is we just bought a new house and we have to move out this one and be in the other one in the next 5 days.
Oh my God.
So, but happy to answer the question. And really comes down to, for me, what I'll call time blocking. Mm-hmm. So what I do really is I decide what I'm going to work on at this point in the day, and then I work on that at that point in the day. And It sounds easy, but there's definitely a lot of discipline involved in it. Mm-hmm. And so, what I mean by that is that if you say, okay, let's say on Tuesdays from 10 to 2, so 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., I do interviews. Mm-hmm. And that's the only time I do media. It takes a lot of discipline, A, to turn down a good media opportunity if that's not your time. Or B, it takes a lot of discipline to only do it during that time. And I guess you could flip it and say it also takes discipline to actually do it during that time. And so now for me, for example, I used to be only Tuesdays for interviews. I've changed that up a bit. Now I'm a little more fluid. I made the decision to be a little bit more fluid. And so I kind of go to where it makes sense to do the interview and I work it around the rest of my stuff. But I still, because the interviews are usually booked weeks or months in advance, I can actually still book everything else around it. So now I'm a little more flexible, but I definitely book around stuff. And before, and it's what I recommend people do early on if they want to be highly productive and a high performer, is don't be flexible. Say, okay, today I'm going to work on, let's say, my writing. So writing a book or writing or what have you. That's what I do every Wednesday from this time to this time, or all Wednesday, whatever it works like for you. And writing could be the whole day. So you could spend 3 hours on a book. Then you could spend 4 hours writing articles for different Entrepreneur or Forbes or whoever you write for or want to write for. So that would be how I would structure one day. And then, like I say, the very next day could be all interviews. And then the other 3 days could be sales, sales related. So the long way to say that, and the long answer is really that I say, what's a priority? So what's an
time management
priority? Exactly. And then I time block based on, this is what I do during this time and nothing else can get in. I mean, that's
so you don't go by, oh, well, I kind of don't feel like it today, so I'm not going to do that. You're just more disciplined and say, this is my day to do this, and I'm going to do it, whether it comes or not.
Absolutely, 100%. And I will say, so to dial into this a little bit further, because it's something I don't talk about often, but it goes even one step behind that. So one of the things I talk about is making sure if you say I'm going to do this for this hour, then you shouldn't have interruptions. Again, I built the foundation enough that now I can allow interruptions if they need to happen, because sometimes the interruptions are my A priorities.
Right.
But having said that, so I'm going to talk about strategy. Here's how I eliminate most distractions. So all I have to do to eliminate distractions is to have the discipline that when I'm working on something, I don't have my computer up and all my notifications are turned off, so I don't hear any dings. I say that now and it'll call me a liar because the only one that dings is my texts.
Yeah.
But I don't get texts on my computer often because it's only people that have an Apple or an iPhone.
Right.
So it's the only one that dings. And I just haven't taken the time to learn how to shut it off, but it's so rare, I don't worry about it as much. But my point is, other than that, I wouldn't know if you were trying to reach me. I wouldn't know if an email was sitting there waiting for me. And then the other part to that is turning my phone on silence. And so I could have 10 people calling me right now, and I would never know. Yeah. So I guess what I'm getting at is on the back end, I'm building a bit of stuff in place so the interruptions don't come in. And then on the front end, I'm practicing the discipline to not allow the interruptions to make their way in. So
and I know, and I know you said this in multiple places on TEDx and in the book and different places. And, I can hear the excuses coming, but what about? Doesn't matter. What about? As an entrepreneur, I work from home. My television never goes on until 7 o'clock at night. Like, it just doesn't go on. I don't care if I'm doing nothing. It's not going to go on because it's a distraction. And, you can get into doing all kinds of stuff when you have to do other things. I think that's how you build extra time into your day, but I hear you do have a guilty pleasure of Netflix. So
yeah, I do. But here's the weird part about that is it's a guilty pleasure. And this is going to sound strange, but I think at the end of the day, it's what works for you. Yeah. And so for me, what works for me really well is if I'm not on an interview, if I'm not on a call, so if I'm working, whether it's, preparing something for blutalks or sending stuff off to somebody to prepare a flyer for us or whatever that is, if it's kind of work that I can do with and have something in the background and still be working, the guilty pleasure of Netflix is I'll put stuff on that I've seen a lot of times. Yeah. And I like the comfort of it playing in the background, even though I'm only taking in less than 5% of it. And so a lot of people, again, would argue that's a foolish thing to do because it's a distraction. There's, you're not fully in the moment and all that kind of stuff. But again, what works for you works for you. So that's the guilty pleasure. Like, I don't really have a whole lot of time to sit down and watch Netflix per se. My girlfriend and I were talking. I don't know the last time we've seen a new movie. Having a 7-week-old, a 3-year-old, moving, me launching a brand, and all that other stuff, it just doesn't allow time for that. But I will tell you the guilty pleasure TV show we watch together and that we do actually watch and not just have it on in the background. And most people probably haven't heard of it, but it's a show called Ridiculousness. And it's on MTV or Much Music, depending if you're in Canada or the US. And essentially what it is it's like a YouTube show. They basically take they take clips. And the guy that runs it is a former skateboarding pro. And what he does is he sends a questionnaire to the people that are going to be guests and asks you, what's your favorite show? What's your favorite this and that? And then he builds the themes around those answers. But what the show is really is they just scour the internet, find hilarious clips of things, and put them into a theme, and then run the clips. And so her and I find it's something we can watch with the kids there. I mean, truth is we probably shouldn't be watching it with the kids there, but the 3-year-old doesn't pay attention and he's in the other room and stuff like that. And obviously the 7-week-old, I'm going to assume he doesn't know what's coming in yet. And there's no swearing. It's all beeped out and stuff. But what I'm getting at when I say watch with them in the room is, I mean, if they distract us, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Because it's not a show that you have to pay attention to the whole show. You just have to catch the funny clip you're watching. Yeah. But it's like America's Funniest Videos. It's basically like that for adults.
Okay.
So again, it's probably not Parenting 101, but I don't know if, as people have seen through the pandemic, I don't know if there is Parenting 101.
I don't know if people knew that you're a comedian or not, but you started off in comedy and transitioned into speaking, which is, kind of why wouldn't you watch and laugh and have a good time? I mean, you kind of have to do that. And it's a decompression kind of thing too, I would imagine. So, Corey, I wanted to talk to you. Like, it's Mission Unstoppable, and I like people to understand how people, started their journey and how they got to be where they are today. And, you talk in the book and at other places about you weren't a great student. You didn't read a book until your late 20s. You kind of were that couch potato we talked about at the beginning of the show. And then something happened, and I guess a light bulb went on, and you went, boom, I'm going to change my life. So what happened? Where did you start? What was it like growing up as little Corey? What happened?
Yeah, so growing up as little Corey, I grew up in a small little tiny town. It was even called a town then. Now it's a city, but just because they amalgamated every place nearby to get it up to enough people to have a city, but it's still the same town, really. And I grew up in this small town. I was raised by a single mother. Why I always add that is because she taught me so many life lessons, but also being raised by a single mother, financially, we weren't living high in the hog. Yeah. So, I mean, I at the lowest of the low, and this isn't as low as a lot of people get, but the lowest of low for us is there were times when we couldn't afford supper. And one night she asked me if she could use some old collectible coins, if I minded, if she could use them to buy us supper. I tell a story every now and then about how she had to work 2 weeks overtime to buy me a winter jacket.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it wasn't like, I don't know how to describe it, but it wasn't like, I'm not going to say we lived in the car, but at the same time, we were maybe only, 2 paychecks ahead of that type thing.
Right.
And so having said that, that played a big part in my life too, because I ended up discovering the Boys and Girls Club. And that was a way that I could play the sports that we couldn't afford to buy me the equipment to play normally. And that had a really big impact on my life. From the leadership point of view, I saw what these people were doing to give back to others. And, and I didn't realize at the time, but later on I would see how big of an impact that had on my life and how it made me feel equal to all those kids that were at the Boys and Girls Club. If I would have been at hockey and not been able to afford good goalie pads, I wouldn't have felt equal. So,
right.
So that on that side, that played a big part in it. So that was kind of my beginnings. As you said, I alluded to, I barely graduated high school. I often say I got a 49+1, so I often say I didn't technically or legally graduate probably, but a teacher gave me the +1 that allowed me to graduate. I left school without knowing the difference between fiction and nonfiction. I basically went years, so into my mid-20s, before reading a single book cover to cover.
Wow.
And so that, that's the first part. You asked, what was it like before? That was the starting point. And so when did it change is what you asked as well. So it changed when I read that first book. And the first book was called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Great book.
By Dale Carnegie. And I read it about age 27. I think we're going to have a cat coming to say hi here soon too.
That's good.
But age 27, I read that book. My mother bought it for $0.25, threw it in my kit bag. I was coming on a company retreat and basically got bored on the retreat and read the book, and I couldn't put it down. Loved it and read it cover to cover. Hey, Tantra, say hi.
Kitty.
Say hi.
Everybody say hi, Kitty.
Usually if I get her to say hi or somebody says hi to her, then she's okay. But yeah, so I went on that trip. I was bored. I read the book, couldn't put it down, read it cover to cover. I read it a second time that weekend. So I jokingly have said it's the first and second book I ever read in my life. And up until that point, I did try to read 4 other books. To Kill a Mockingbird, Death of a Salesman, Lord of the Flies, rather. And then I tried Cujo. And it wasn't that it scared me. It was just it didn't pull me in. The book. The movie scared the heck out of me.
Yeah.
But the book didn't pull me in. And so I tried 4 books. It didn't work.
The Stand was scarier.
Yeah, well, the movie, The Stand?
Not the movie, the book.
Oh, the book. I don't think I read it, actually.
Oh, my God. The scariest book I think he wrote.
Okay. I'll have to maybe go back and check that out. So I didn't read those. I didn't finish those books. I started them. And if they sound familiar, the ones that I said, those 3, they were books that we were assigned in school. Yeah. And I just found ways around.
That's why you didn't read like the Jack London stuff you're Canadian. I don't know.
I didn't read. I didn't read any stuff. I honestly didn't see the purpose of reading. It didn't pull me in. And that Dale Carnegie book, the first story, and I can even tell you what the first story is. Obviously I've read the book many times since, sure. but the first story is about this guy named Two Guns Crowley. And he tells the story about how in our minds, he was this terrible gangster, but how in his mind, he's like, why does the world hate me? I haven't done anything wrong to anybody. And he was talking about the perspectives of how that person, they're not doing anything wrong, and they can only see their point of view. And so, but the storytelling was so masterful, it pulled me and it didn't let go. And that really started my love of reading. I now read 3 to 5 books a month, most months.
Yeah.
It started my love of reading. So that kicked it off. You said, where did the change happen? The second change happened around the same time, which was when I started performing stand-up comedy. I got tricked into it, but I ended up going. I kept going back week after week, and then discovered professional speaking, because I found out you could get paid to do this, where with comedy, you don't make so much money. So I got into speaking, and then the rest is history. That kind of opened up the doors for everything. So
like you seem obsessed with super achievers, with the super success, not necessarily monetary success, but those who and you pursued that passion by interviewing like over 6,000 people, so, or close to 6,000. I'm sure it's be lots more before your life is over. But it's really interesting when I think about you, from a really little town in Prince Edward Island, Nowheresville, Canada, and you have accomplished so much in so little time, really. It's pretty impressive. I have to say that. I don't think Canadians ever get their due, so I have to give you the due.
Well, thank you so much. And I have to say, in recent years, I'm starting to realize when I have Islanders, so fellow Islanders, come up to me and say, I've been following you for this amount of time, and just the fact that you've been able to do this reminds me it doesn't matter where you're born and all that kind of stuff. And I never view myself that way, but when you have that said, it really kind of reminds you, I guess it becomes sort of a driver, but it reminds you that there's no small impact. There's no small action. I mean, anything you do could impact a life.
That's right.
Wouldn't you want to?
And which is really great segue into how, your, one of your sole purpose really is to make a difference, is to help people. That's built right into the core of, of what you do. So in your mind, the vision for helping others or changing the world or whatever it is, what does that vision look like? What does it feel like?
So
or the legacy of that.
Yeah. Well, and people ask me, what's my mission? What do I want my legacy to be? Things like that. And I have a mission statement that's pretty simple. It is good. To be the guy who motivates, donates, inspires, educates, and entertains. And the reason I'm doing it, my bigger why, is to create a positive ripple in everyone's ocean that I come across with, even if it's only for 5 minutes or it could be a lifetime. And so what it looks like to me is just, and this is going to sound strange and it's not to minimize it, but it's really doing what's right. Mm-hmm. And doing what's right to me, which by the way, governed by my mission statement, am I motivating? Am I donating? Am I inspiring? But to do what's right isn't as hard as we make it. So I could sit there and say, okay, I'd use an example, but if I'm launching like my blutalks brand, if we had, let's say the speaking component, live speaking, we have the virtual events, and we have the book chapter that people are involved in. Well, we decide to add a virtual event, and the temptation could be to say, okay, well, now I'm going to charge people to be involved in this virtual event because it's a new element we added. But for the people that basically supported us from the start, to me, the other part was what's right. And to me, what's right was to give them, to over deliver and say, hey, I know you thought you'd probably end up paying for anything new, but you're not going to have to. And so it's a simple decision. Sometimes you might go, okay, well, you also got to look at what's realistic. If you're putting in an extra 500 hours a week to do it, or sorry, a year to do it, then you might have to make a different decision. But I guess the other side is doing what's right. Can we do that without putting in all this extra time? And we could.
So I'm going to stop you there for a second, because where did that come from? Does that come from the kid who's single mom, scrapped and scraped for every little bit, and so you think, geez, it's hard for people to come up with extra cash? Or is it that I just have, I'm so passionate about what I do and I really want people involved, and if I can over deliver, I'm going to do that because it's, like you said, it's the right thing to do. But that's a core value of yours. I mean, not everybody would have that same value, but I think because you have that value, and just like with the law of attraction, right? You are attracting others with that same mindset, I believe. So
I feel like, I'm sure there's a big part of it that came from my mom, and we'll say for better or worse, because my mother is a giver, and admittedly, and I've always, anything I've ever said on the air, I've talked to my mom about, am I okay saying this? And she said yes, and I know I am. And in this case, she said yes, and she's not as good of a receiver. She struggles.
Givers aren't.
Which is really wild, I think, Frankie, because people think automatically it's so much easier to take or receive. But I can tell you, there's like, because everybody thinks, oh, it's hard to give, but it's not hard to receive because you're getting something. But there's a lot of people that have a real big problem.
True givers have a problem receiving, and you have something that they have to learn to do, because everybody wants to have, the enjoyment of giving. And if you don't let them, then, you're doing them a disservice.
Absolutely. And to that point, I would say that the giver side was easier because I saw it all my life.
Yeah.
The receiving part has always been a challenge. And I'm never going to say it's going to be easy. It's become easier. And I've somebody might say, hey, I want to connect you with so-and-so. And it wouldn't be abnormal in the past for me to say, oh, no, don't worry about that. They might be wanting to connect me with the person that could change my entire life. Mm-hmm. And I can't see it. And it took me a while, and I wrote about it in my latest book, about the fact that it's only healthy when you're able to give and receive equally. And the truth is, I'm almost there now. I'm still not there. I'm not going to, like anything, when you're writing about something, it doesn't mean you're perfect at it yet, but it means you know better. You're learning. And when you fall off the horse, you still get back up. And so I think I got it from my mom, but the receiving she struggles with. And the receiving I struggled with for a long time. And, tell you how far that is, I won't name drop on this, but I've had some really big names with some really big networks after I've done a powerful interview with them say, how can I give back to you? How can I help you? And then I would say, you know what, let's just put it over here in the bin, and I'll ask if I ever need it. But the problem with that is when you go back to that person 3 years later, 2 years later, it doesn't have the same energy around it. And they might even say, oh, I'd love to help, but.
Yeah, exactly.
So why wouldn't I do it at the time? But that's what I'm saying. Like, receiving was the harder part. So if I'm being full disclosure, receiving has always been harder for me.
A little bit embarrassing.
Yeah. But now it's way better. Like I'm probably like 110% at giving, and I'm 90% at receiving.
Good. I like that.
I was at 20%.
Well, at least it's not the reverse, because, people who only take, it's not nice. I mean, that doesn't feel good, right?
No, well, at least, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but at least on the giving thing, when you're giving, you get the feeling of giving, I think that's, to be honest, about that, I actually feel sorry for the people that only take, because I think they don't realize the feeling and power you get from giving. And I don't mean power in like a power way.
Yeah.
I just mean like what it does for your energy, the energy supply it gives you when you give for the heart and for no apparent reason and no expectation and no agenda. It's so rewarding to you. And I actually think like people like, oh, he's a taker, so he'll always get ahead of me. I don't think so. At least from a personal wealth point of view, they're actually further behind you because they don't know that experience. So yeah, I think it's the perfect scenario is to be good at giving and good at receiving.
I agree with that. Okay, the Book of Why, that your latest book, 12th book, forward by James Redfield, wrote Celestine Prophecy. I mean, how extraordinary is that? Really made it magical for me, and probably everybody else who reads that forward. It's very inspiring, and I really, it was a great way to open up that book, because what you're giving in that book is really the ability for people, if you already know some of that stuff, you broke it into what you say 3 acts. And so if you don't know anything, you read the whole book. If you know a little bit, you can start in the second act. If you know everything, there's always something to learn. And I think that was kind of the message, is that it doesn't matter how great you are, the Jack Canfields of the world still believe that they can learn another little something, a nugget. There's a nugget in everything. So don't give up on learning, and don't think that you know everything, because the people who think they know everything actually know nothing. Right? So that's really it in a nutshell, I think. So why was it so important for you to write this book?
I said this the other day for the first time, and I never analyzed this before or thought it through to this level, but I don't feel I wrote the book. I think the book wrote me. And what do I mean by that? I think so, because so the other side of my backstory, which you alluded to in the bio about the music side. And so I put in 4 CDs years ago, toured all the stuff that comes with being a musician. And I wrote almost every song. I wrote every song except for maybe 2 songs on the 4 albums. And those songs, I can tell you which ones were channeled and which ones I wrote.
Yeah.
And so when I say that, which would sound weird to somebody who hasn't had that experience. And by the way, while I was having the experience, I didn't feel like this was being channeled. My hand's just going on its own.
Yeah.
But while I was doing it, I was able to flawlessly rhyme, put everything together, have everything make sense without me thinking what makes sense with this. But then other songs, when you labor over them, you're like, okay, well, what word is going to actually rhyme with this? Like you hear it on Friends, rhymes with orange, and like, so that there is that side of, for me, I have both sides. I have the side where I'm writing a song, and I feel like I have a song that writes me. And so this book, I feel like, was dying to get out, and maybe I just happen to be the vessel. I'm not sure. But why this book and why this book for me is so important is, unlike my other books, which I value them all, but there's no back end to this. So my other books, and I'm speaking now like somebody listening that isn't into the book business, that just reads books. When I say no back end, they're probably going to be like, I don't know what you mean. And if I start explaining it, people are going to be like, there's a back end on most books. But most people that have been successful with books have a back end to it. And what I mean by that is they have, for example, in the book, they might say, if you'd like to learn how to become a professional speaker, reach out to me. Or they might have sign up for your free whatever here. And then when you get into that funnel, that way of going through the channels, there's something they're offering you. Well, this book doesn't have that. And it's the only book, I think, out of all my books that doesn't really have a natural back end. And it's because it felt to me like the book, again, that was written by itself. And it felt more like the Four Agreements or The Alchemist or the or Celestine Prophecy in the way it was written than it did, let's say, like a book by maybe Russell Brunson about ClickFunnels, which actually, helps you learn how to use ClickFunnels, but then also is the back end of ClickFunnels. And so everything about this book feels like it was trying to write itself, and it didn't give me a choice. And it also didn't give me a choice on me trying to do the book only for the sake of building a back end around it. And so within the book, there's 3 acts, as you mentioned. First act is dedicated to finding your why, but then also I asked these 4 questions around why, which I heard Jim Rohn deliver in a keynote one time. And so I took the 4 headers. I never took one word of what Jim Rohn said in his keynote, but what he said was, why? And then he started talking about why. And then he said, why not? And then he started talking about why not? And then why not you? Why not now? And so I basically posed those questions. Why shouldn't it be you? And then, as Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen could have said, why bother writing Chicken Soup for the Soul? Somebody else will. But guess what? Nobody ever did. And it needed to be those 2 guys in that order. And so I basically addressed those things in this first chapter. So helping you find your why, and then also making the case why it has to be you, why it has to be now, all those kind of things. Act 2 is the summary of what I've learned after these 6,000 interviews about what the high achievers do differently. And that's the how part of the book. How can you do this stuff? And then the last act is it's called Enlightened. And it's essentially, how can you do this stuff and still be able to sleep at night? How can you do this stuff like Zig Ziglar did, where not only did he pull you up to the top with him at the top of the mountain, he also got behind to push other people up to the top of the mountain. So how can you do it in a way where you can sleep at night? And then I also go into things like self-care and sweat lodges and meditation and stuff like that, kind of an awakening. And then the bonus section of the book is 400 quotes, original quotes by people I interviewed from those interviews. And so why I shared all that and went through all of that as far as the book, you can tell it's not a traditional business book. It's really a book designed to help you go to the next level in your personal life. And, and obviously that's going to impact your professional life. So that was a long answer to say, Frankie, it's because the book wanted to be out and it wrote itself through me.
Well, I think James Redfield alluded to it at the beginning. And I think that for myself, I've seen it happening, spiritually, there's an awakening on the planet. And I feel like the book is part of that awakening because, and it is about social impact because it's, you're saying, okay, you're going to get to a place where you're going to be successful and you're going to be able to give back. And it should actually be built into it anyway. And so I think that is, your gift to that awakening in a way. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's so humbling.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's humbling, but I do believe that, that it's there. And I think that is what's so extraordinary. You see, a lot of people, they fear giving away their knowledge because they think other people are going, that's a lack mindset though, but they fear giving it away. They think if they know that, they know my secret to success. So, they're going to get ahead of me or they're going to, be better than me or whatever. But you're like so generous with your knowledge. I mean, look at all these people, there's 6,000 people. Hey, you don't have to interview 6,000 people. You just have to do what the top 10 said to do. And here it is right here. I just have to go here and read it. And that's part of, one of the keys of action that you talk about is don't waste your time going everywhere. Go to a source, one source where you get all your information from, and you're a source where people can get success from, and read this book, and boom, Bob's your uncle, right? You know how to do everything.
and you know what? What my tagline used to be on the speaking side is, and this is spoken in the third person, but it's basically, Corey has dissected the minds of thousands of thought leaders, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
And
well, that's it.
It up. I mean, that what I've tried to do, once I got to a certain number, a lot of people have said, so you're like a modern day Napoleon Hill. And, I'll take that compliment every day of the week. And for those that don't know, Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich, one of the most successful self-help books of all time. And he built his whole business and career off of interviewing the likes of Andrew Carnegie and Thomas Edison, Henry Ford. And so, what I've been trying to do is dissect these thought leaders and get inside their mind, and then figure out two things. One, what do they share in common that most people don't do? And then what do they do differently that most people don't do? And so, and there's, there's a fine line between the two of those, but what they do differently is they might even do it different than their colleagues. They might even do it different than other influencers. And I want to know what that one thing is that none of us are doing yet. And then again, I want to know what's the thing that all the high achievers are doing, but nobody else is. And so I even go to the percentages. What is the top thing they have in common? And I'll drop it with the 2 seconds without any fanfare. The top thing they all share is they're all living on purpose. So they figured out what their calling is, and they're living on purpose. And that's not to be confused with living with passion or finding your passion, because my show used to be called Conversations with Passion. And I had so many people near the end start complaining about how I'm sick of people saying you need to find your passion or you're not living a full life. And so I want to give a distinction that when I say live on purpose, to me, passion is what you do. Purpose is why you're doing it. To me, your purpose will rarely ever change. Your passion might change 100 times in your life. So my passion could have been stand-up. And why I was doing it was to put a smile on someone's face, and then it changed to speaking. And then it expanded to podcasting and expanded to writing. And so that passion could change multiple times. Your purpose for most people might only change 2 or 3 times in your life. So what I'm saying is they live on purpose. They figured out what their calling is, and that's what they spend their time doing. Right.
So never work another day in your life because you're living on purpose.
Well, you know what? I did talk for a group of financial service planners, and I said, can you retire at 20 if you haven't invested the way that you guys suggest? And I said, how many people think you can? There's 300 people in the room, and like 4 hands went up. And I knew that was going to be what it was, because they're thinking, how could you possibly retire? And I said, you don't get an inheritance, you don't get any free money, nothing's changed. Can you do it? And they all said no. And I said, well, I'm going to prove to you that you can. But what I did was I changed the distinction. I reframed what retirement means. And to me, retirement, because we talk about retirement, is leaving your job, finishing the job that you don't like doing.
Right.
So to me, you're working when you're doing a job. But when you're doing what you love, it's not working. Right. So to me, I said I stopped working at 20, haven't worked a day in my life. And if you catch me working, you let me know and I'll stop. And so I said to that group, I said, and so I retired at basically 20 because I stopped working, whatever working is. And it's funny because after the talk, when I was going into the elevator, 3 of the younger guys jumped in front of the elevator and said, just wanted to let you know, we're starting tomorrow. We're going on the Corey Poirier retirement plan. They got it. But to your point, to me, whatever we want, because there's most people that have found what they love, they're working what we want to call working. They're going at 80 and 85 and not. I just interviewed Bob Proctor. He's 85 and he seems like a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
If I said to Bob Proctor, when are you going to retire? He'd be like, what are you talking about? You're off your rocker. It doesn't even make sense to him. So to my point of that is, as far as retiring goes, if you take the money part out of it, you can retire anytime you're ready.
Right.
As far as having the money to not work again, well, my argument to that is, why would you want to have enough money to not do what you love? Like, yes, you want to have the money to have all the freedom. Yes, you might want to have the money just to have the comfort of having the money. Sure. But if you're only doing it for the sake of not doing what you love, to me, that's counterintuitive. That's counterintuitive. Like, why would you want to go, okay, now I should just stop doing what I love doing because I have enough money in the bank?
Right.
To me, that's more of a reason to do it. Now, like you said, you can actually impact more lives because you have money in the bank to do it.
I think that's what happens. I think, I, as a coach, I see people wake up in their, late 60s and go, okay, I've achieved my $1 million. I did it. I've got the house. I got the key. I'm not happy. What can I do to change my life? And what they do ultimately is figure out how they can help other people. And it all changes for them. That perspective changes. Right. And they become happy again. It's not about making the money. It's It's about achieving things. I think people like to achieve goals, and they like to feel good about, accomplishments. And whether that's helping you or building a house or whatever it is, right? People feel good about that. And so that's an important thing, that people need a purpose. There it is. They just need a purpose.
100%.
They always have to have a purpose. I want to talk about, if you don't mind, can we talk about the keys in the book a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. Like the first key is to practice the law of action. And I think that's really clever. I have that in my book too, because, people talk about law of attraction and they go, oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You know what? You kind of have to help it along a little bit.
100%.
Yeah. And I like that. So why don't you bring that in? You talk about it a little bit.
Well, I'm going to give Lisa Nichols a little plug here for a second, because Lisa was in The Secret, and she said something when I brought up the law of attraction to her versus the law of action, meaning doing one on its own or both of them together. And I believe if you put both of them together, you're going to get results on steroids.
Yes.
And so I brought it up to Lisa and said, you were in The Secret. What are your thoughts around this? Like, do you feel, I said, a lot of people tell me, and it's what my perspective was, but a lot of people tell me it was great. It was an awakening. It impacted millions of people and all those kind of great things. However, the people that didn't get it, where they struggled, I think, was because the movie kind of presented it like you'll have a motorbike outside by tomorrow if you start thinking about a motorbike tonight.
Right.
And for most people, it doesn't work that way. And I said, like, there wasn't really a whole lot of focus on what actions you have to actually take to make this happen in your life. And so I brought this up to Lisa Nichols, and she said for a couple of years, she was out talking about abundance and the action you have to take. And she gave the greatest, for me, greatest vision that I saw. Like the greatest, she described it in such a visual way that it summed up everything in a nutshell. And what she said was, if you were to sit on your couch for a year and you had the most beautiful vision board, like a vision board that people rated, a team of, she didn't go this far, I'm adding this in, but a committee rated it, 10 out of 10. Everybody rated it 10 out of 10. Best vision board ever made. And you looked at it at every commercial break for that whole year. So you've done more vision boarding than most people in the world, but you never got off the couch. All you're going to have at the end of the year is a big lump in your couch. To me, that sums it up right there.
Yeah.
If there's a magnet that's trying to send stuff your way, you at least need to step in front of it.
Yeah.
You can't sit beside looking at the thing going past you and then saying manifestation doesn't work.
Right.
And to be honest, I've even got away from using the term myself, law of attraction, and simply talk about manifestation.
Yeah.
Because that's the bringing it to life part. To me, manifestation is a combination of those two, action and attraction.
Yes.
And I gave the example in the book about how, to me, this is a visual to it as to why I think you need to have the action. Is I gave the example that I made a list early in the year of who I want to share the bill with, of speakers. I hadn't shared the bill at that point years ago with a top name speaker. So I made a list and said, who do I want to share the bill with? And on the top of the list, I put Deepak Chopra. And I didn't do anything with it for like 2 months, and nothing happened, of course. And then, but of course, I had it on vision board and nothing was happening. And based on the law of attraction on its own, it was on the vision board. They should have just called me and said, we want to book you, but it wasn't happening. So I said, okay, maybe I need to take some action with this. And so Deepak was at the top of the list. And the only action I took at that point is I just searched, where can I find that he's speaking this year? And he was only speaking at one place where there were other speakers on the bill, because most of his events are like an evening with Deepak Chopra.
Right.
And so I found one place, lo and behold, it was near me. It was actually only like an hour's drive away. And I reached out to the organizers and said, hey, I'd love to speak at your event. I'm willing to speak for free. And at this point, I was already getting thousands as a speaker. And I said, I would like to speak for free. And they're like, we'd love to have you, but we're already full. And they didn't have any spots left. And the call for speakers was closing that night or something like that. And so I said, okay, well, I'd like to at least leave my name in for next year. And I got a call a couple days later, and they said, Corey, we're looking at what you want to speak on. We had one cancellation. We had a waiting list, and people were above you, but we like what you want to speak on more. So we want to see if you might be interested in coming in for a meeting to see if you're a good fit for the event. Ultimately, I ended up speaking at the event. Now, I did speak for free, which is, again, what I offered, so that's on me. I did share the bill with Deepak Chopra, and the local news broadcasting group called Eastlink TV came in and filmed me, and then they aired it like 15 times a week for the whole month.
There you go.
So I was getting a lot of coverage out of it. But the point of this whole story is that I got booked because I reached out to them and said, is there a spot? And then I said, I'd like to be in there for next year. What are the odds, do you think, if I wouldn't have reached out to them that day? Now, the call was closing tomorrow. They had a waiting list already. What are the odds they would have randomly said, let's reach out to a guy, even though we don't need more speakers, and bring him, share the bill with Deepak? So I may have shared the bill with one of the other speakers on the list, but I certainly wouldn't have with Deepak Chopra without that action. And to
Absolutely
me,
not.
that's an example. The reason it worked is because I practiced action and I had it on a vision board.
Yeah, well, I have a couple of things I call Frankieisms, and one of them is that opportunities aren't lost; they're not actioned upon. And I think that's kind of sets that example up. Right? What did you speak on?
That one I spoke on the 5 weeds we must pull from our life.
That was a really good talk.
Well, and the reason you know that is because that was my first TEDx talk.
Yeah.
So it was my first TEDx talk, and I spoke on it. I'd already delivered my TEDx talk, and so that's why I spoke on it there. I say that because usually TEDx doesn't want you to be delivering the talk elsewhere until you deliver it in front of them. So I had already delivered the talk. I was able to send them a video of it, and they liked it, and they said, "Let's bring you in for that." So yeah, that's what I spoke on at the event, and I got to meet about 8 other people that I'm still in contact with now, all these years later too.
That's awesome.
All because of action.
And so the other number 2 is expand your comfort zone. And that is so important. And I think that people, that's probably the biggest inhibitor really of people doing anything is the fear of coming out of your comfort zone.
100%. And this wasn't intentional. Until you just said it this way, until I heard it myself, I didn't realize until now that's my second TEDx talk. So we just talked about success key number 1, and I referenced my first TEDx talk, and my second talk was about
good.
That wasn't, and it's funny because I didn't talk about the weeds inside the chapter, but you got me to talk about it. You brought it out of me now.
Yeah.
So as far as the comfort zone, I believed in it so much that I developed a whole talk around it. And essentially what I talked about is how, for me, everything opened up. The world opened up to me once I expanded my comfort zone. When I was inside my comfort zone, I don't feel now, knowing what I know, I ever could have become the best version of myself inside my comfort zone. I firmly believe all the things that I wanted were outside my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And so originally, it was by accident that I expanded my comfort zone. For instance, when I did stand-up comedy, that expanded my comfort zone.
Oh, yeah, big time.
But I was tricked to be on the stage as it was, so it wasn't a plan. Then after I got that far outside my comfort zone, I went to Tofino, British Columbia, and I ended up surfing, even though I can't swim. And so that was way outside my comfort zone. But I don't think I would have done that if I hadn't done stand-up comedy. And because the swimming thing was on the ground, it was a little easier to take on. But then I did it, and I'm like, well, I survived this. Then I went skydiving because I was like, okay, well, if I can survive the swimming thing and I can't swim, well, I can survive skydiving if I'm going tandem with somebody else who knows how to skydive, and I can love the experience. And so my point is that all those things wouldn't happen if I stayed inside my tiny comfort zone. And so with my talk, if people are so inclined to check it out, I give 3 steps for how to get outside your comfort zone. And, one of them is basically figuring out what your comfort zone looks like in the first place. What's inside your comfort zone, what's outside of it. And then figuring out what are the baby steps you'd have to take the big step outside your comfort zone in that one area. So for example, stand-up comedy, what are the things you would have to do if you weren't like me and you actually plan to get on a stand-up stage? And so it might mean buying a comic book or a comedy book. The Comedy Bible actually is a great book to buy if you want to do that. Or it might mean going and watching local stand-up comedy. It might mean watching comedy on HBO and studying the comics and taking notes about why the jokes work. So you could do all these baby steps and reward yourself for each one. And then eventually your comfort zone's expanded enough that when you actually go to get on the stage, it's not as scary anymore.
Right.
So that's step number 1, just as an example. But yeah, I believe everything happens outside your comfort zone.
The key number 3, we talked actually about it at the top of the hour, was learning about focus. And you talked about, you put your phone away, there's no distractions. You focus 100% on the person that you're talking to or on yourself, on the things that you put out for yourself. So good job on that.
Well, and I call it the power of no. It's being able to say no to the things. And for somebody that wants a strategy for how to do this in a matter of 30 seconds, you heard me earlier say what my mission statement was. Write your mission statement. And it could be as simple as I want to be a good parent, but figure out what it is.
Yeah.
Write the 3 or 4 things that you have to do. What are the character traits? What are the things that you have to be doing to stay in line with that? Yep. And then say no to everything that doesn't align with that. So for me, if it's not going to help me give back, so donate, motivate, inspire, educate, or entertain. If it's going to be 0 of those, it's the easiest no I'll ever say in my life. If it's going to be 2 of those, it's probably still going to be a no without a regret.
Yeah.
If it's going to be 4 or 5 of those, meaning it's covering off almost every one of them, it's probably going to be the easiest yes without a regret. I turned down a TV show based on it not being aligned with any of those 5 things. And I would regret it as younger when I was getting into
That's
this.
disciplined, you know, that is. It's really disciplined.
When I was younger, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I would have actually said, yeah, high paying clients because it wasn't aligned. But again, until I knew that mission statement, I didn't know what to put it up against. So I was like, maybe it'll, and here's my thinking when I didn't know and I wasn't focused, I would say, maybe it'll turn into something. You know, synchronicity wise, maybe it'll develop into something. And it could, but so could the other thing that I'm saying yes to that I should be saying yes to.
You know, you're making me think for a second because I really, as a coach, the very first thing I ask a client would be, what are your top 5 values? And I think the ability to do what you do lies somewhere in your value system.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think those all align with the values, like giving back and putting a smile on people's face and all of this stuff with integrity. I mean, it's kind of the thing that's unsaid, but you have to be able to sleep at night. That's a big part of it. And, you know, a lot of people say to me, how do you get so much done? And clearly you don't sleep. And the truth is, I won't, because I have 2 kids now, I won't say I sleep this amount of time, but I'm in bed, I would say probably about 10 hours a night.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Well, see, because of having such a young kid, the 3-year-old, we start trying to put him in bed around 8. Some nights it works, some nights it doesn't. But a lot of nights if we're putting him in bed by 9, like meaning if it takes us till 9, I just go to sleep at the same time.
Okay.
And I don't start my days usually till about 7:38. I'm not like a 5 a.m. guy. So just that alone means on the nights when he sleeps all the way through, I'm getting more than 8 hours sleep, well more than 8. So what I'm saying though is as well is I can sleep at night. Yeah. I would be up tossing and turning all night if I wasn't living with and serving with integrity. And you know, I had a conversation with a big name author, and I said, you know, I just can't do that, whatever that was at the time. And he said, that's because people like you and me, Corey, we would never be able to go to sleep at night. We'd never be able to look anybody in the face.
It's true.
If it goes that way. And you know, I'd love to say it was always that way. It wasn't necessarily always that way. I wasn't too far away from that. I wasn't, you know, on the opposite end of the spectrum where I could just like tip a person over walking past them and laugh. But I was certainly like, back when I was a little kid and I smoked, taking cigarettes from my mom and not having any guilt about it, like small things. But I mean, I was also a kid, right? I was also 10 and 12. But my point is that who I am today, it has to be with integrity, whatever I'm doing. Like if I've had times, I'm sure we all have, where I've went into a store and, you know, I bought something, and let's say I bought something, and I'm just using an example, but let's say I used a $50 bill and they're giving me change for $100.
Right.
For some reason, because their head's not there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not the person that can just keep the extra money.
No, I couldn't either. It actually scares me. I have to give it back. I have to give it. It's karma. I'm scared. Yeah.
I guess that's the thing, right?
Yeah. My daughter was, I got a call. They said, your daughter, you know, shoplifted. I go, no, she didn't. She's afraid to steal. She's afraid to have do anything wrong. And it came out as they investigated. It wasn't her. It was somebody else. But I knew that about her, you know, because she's like me. So, yeah.
I totally get it. I should plead the fifth, but I will say, because I get caught and the items got turned back. So it's not like it's something I did and plus the statute of limitations is probably a lot of years older. But when I was 16, there were like 3 times in my life that I was with friends and we stole from the store. All 3 times we got caught. One of the times we got called into the principal's office. I got grounded 2 of the 3 times. So clearly it wasn't my calling. I wasn't.
Yeah. Fingers weren't that slick.
No.
That's kind of funny. You know, kids are always tempted to do that, but you learn. I remember walking my son back into a store to give him back the chocolate bar he stole.
Well, and you know, the one thing I know about myself when I was that young, I tried one time on my own and I couldn't do it. Like I tried over and over and couldn't do it. So the 3 times I did it were with other friends. So I actually even needed people there, not to get caught with me, but just people there because I was so nervous I would have dropped the item on the floor.
Yeah. Talking about doing things with other people. Now, I don't know if I can't remember where I read it. Might have been in the book. I don't know. But you did talk about you and Shelley sitting on the couch devouring these success videos and TED Talks and whatever. So she had just as much of an interest, or did you influence her to watch this, or did you do it together? Or did you pump each other? Go, let's figure this out so we can like get ahead in our lives. Like what happened there?
So, I mean, there's a bit of yes to all that, meaning I was definitely, I would say, the person that discovered, and I would say when I did my first TEDx talk, she probably hadn't seen one yet. So I would definitely be the person that probably brought the TEDx to us. So, you know, I brought it to us, but she's the one that came up with the idea of doing and we got to get back to it. We did it for quite a while, but a TED Tuesday, where every Tuesday we pick the same video no matter where I was traveling. And then we would get on the phone or talk or whatever, even email or text, and talk about what we learned in that video and how we can use it in our life or business.
Nice.
And so that, so that was her idea, but I was the one who's, let's say, brought the TEDx to us.
Sure.
But I would also add that she's always been into, she's one of those people that she's a professional learner. Like she'll always, every day of the week, if you gave her the right learning opportunity and excess money, she would invest in learning.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a stretch, for like, it wasn't like either of us was pushing the other one. It was more just like, it was a common interest. And, one of our first trips together, I won't say dates, but our first trips for 2 weeks type thing together was to go to Orlando. And it was actually to see the Hayos conference. It was the Hayos conference. It ended up becoming really significant. We bought the tickets when Wayne Dyer was still alive, and he passed away before we got there. So it ended up becoming the Wayne Dyer Memorial Conference. Yeah. And it was one where his whole family was there. It was the only one they were all at. And so it was a very special moment. But my point is, her and I both were the type of people that both agreed, let's go, both got jazzed up about it, sat together at the event, took notes, so we are both similar. The last event I got her to was Brendan Burchard in Phoenix. And she had been wanting to go for a while, and we sat together, took notes, same thing. So I don't know that either of us had to push the other one on, but I was probably the one that brought the things themselves, like, let's go to Brendan Burchard, let's watch TEDx. I brought those in, but she, came up with ideas for how we could actually use them more efficiently than I was.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great to have a partner that has that kind of symbiotic relationship and just improves instead of takes, right? There we go. We circled back.
I've had the opposite, so I would agree.
Yeah. Okay, Corey, we're almost out of time. Gosh, you got so much on the go. You got the blue talks that have started, and the book is about to come out. When's it coming out? Tell everybody.
So there's a catch-22 with the book. The book is technically out now, so people can buy it now. I'm going to do it. The original plan was the book was dropped on March 17th. If that date sounds familiar to people, it's because it was 4 days after they called coronavirus a pandemic. So that was our print launch date. So everything got changed.
Yes, also Women's International Women's Day, because I launched 2 books on that date myself.
So we launched the digital book version of the book in February, the month before, and it hit 5 bestsellers list, did really well. And then we were planning to do the same thing with the print book, but then coronavirus happened. And it just changed everything. Like, I was actually supposed to be at my publisher's conference on the 13th, was our red carpet day, and we had to cancel the trip on the way there. And so what I decided was I was going to push it to fall. So I'm going to do a full real launch, likely end of October. But having said that, anybody listening now, the idea of doing the launch is to spur a lot of excitement at once. But I want to impact people's lives, whether it's at that time or not. So if you want to get the book, it's already out. It's been out for a little bit now. You can buy it as a print book. It's actually even got the new cover on. We had the bestseller thing, so that would be in the cover. And you're still offering the free audiobook? Yeah, 100%.
The purchase? Yeah, there you go. So for those who don't like to read?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's right. It's on the second page of the book, tells you how to get that. And we also were blessed and lucky enough to have T. Harv Eker come on as one of the endorsements. So we changed the cover to have him on it too. So we made a few little changes and a few things inside. And so the latest version, even if you order right now, it's 100% available. And do you want me to give people the link where they can get that? Or okay, so the easiest way to get that is thebookofwhy.com. I like to keep everything easy. Thebookofwhy.com. So it's easy. You go there, and not every, but a lot of the retailers are on there. So Target, Walmart, Amazon, you can pick which one you want.
So if you want to learn how to be a TEDx speaker, Corey offers courses in that. If you want to pretty much do anything, Corey offers it.
Well, I'll say mostly around influencing. If you want to, my whole thing is to help people amplify their message.
There you go.
So whether that's they want to get on stages, they want to write in books. Yeah, if you're looking for anything to do with getting your a raised platform or getting your brand to the next level, whether again that's through stage, through interviews, audio interviews, print, whatever that looks like, that's pretty much where I.
Which is the one website that covers everything. coreypoirier.com or which one covers everything?
The best one probably is That Speaker Guy. speakerguide.com.
Okay.
That's speakerguide.com. And the reason I say that is the only link that's not on there out of everything we've talked about would be the blutalks link, just because it's so new. But our social media channels are all at the top. And so that's why it's the hub, because you can go on there and then follow me or connect with me or reach out on any of the social media platforms. And when you do that, you're going to see all the details and things happening with blutalks as well.
There you go. That's speakerguide.com. Go there and you will find everything. We're going to say goodbye to Facebook. Goodbye, Facebook. And